Hello, I'm David Morris. There are so many intriguing stories of exchange between the cultures of the South Pacific and the early Australian colonies, like the Maori leader Hongi Hika, who came to Sydney in the early days of the British colony there, stayed with the Reverend Samuel Marsden. Actually, Marsden asked him for his head, a greatly insulting thing to ask, but the Maori leader, in some sort of spirit of friendship, actually carved his head, a copy of his own head, which is here in the museum, the Chau Museum at the University of Sydney. And actually, Hongi Hika, when he returned to Sydney years later after a visit with the King in London, actually brought the gifts that had been given to him and traded them in Sydney for bullets and weapons, which he took back to New Zealand and used those in the battle in New Zealand against the British. So some fascinating stories. People from Fiji, from Samoa and other places who came to Australia in the early days and were welcomed as leaders and were feted and given all of the pageantry. There was lots of local interest in the cultures of the Pacific. And here in the museum at the University of Sydney, there are so many fascinating artefacts, but it's not so much the artefacts but the stories that come with them. I really invite you and recommend that you come and visit, especially if you're in Sydney, and come and learn about the history of Australia and the Pacific. Because in recent times, there's been some lack of interest, I fear. I used to work for the Pacific Islands Forum, the regional organisation, and I used to find that often in both directions, between Australia and the Pacific Islands, we often misunderstand each other. We don't have the depth of cultural understanding of each other that perhaps we should have as close neighbours.